NBA props, NHL props, UFC props, and that's just in the next 36 hours. Welcome to Prop It Up. I am Andy Lang from WagerTalk.com, being joined as always by my fellow prop master, Andrew McGinnis from WagerTalk.com. Guys, we are going over a ton of props. Even though we're getting ready to wind down the regular season, there are tons of profits out there in NBA and NHL. We'll also go over some UFC plays and also just some little notes from the PFL card that was last night, Andrew. But let's just jump right into NHL. A pretty good slate of games today, which is different. Normally, these Friday slates have been pretty lackluster. But let's start talking about some of these NHL games. I would say probably the Oilers Avalanche is kind of the marquee game of the night, but we got a few games. Where do you want to start in the NHL tonight?
Andy, I want to join you in on the fun and bet some unders tonight, actually. And there's one or two I have in mind here. And, like you mentioned, the Oilers Avalanche, yeah, it's definitely a game where we can find some overs and we can find some guys to bet on to score a goal or do something good for us. But let's talk about Anaheim and Seattle for a second here. I want to go with Ryan Strome under on his points. You're going to get minus 130 on this price for a guy that's gone 10 straight games without scoring. And the funny thing is about this matchup against Seattle is that their defense hasn't really gone away as much. It's just been their offense that's gone away. So when you look at Anaheim coming into town, I'm not saying I expect Seattle to blow them out of the water either. I just look at the offense and how dried up it is for Anaheim, and we're going to get a minus 130 price on a relatively respected guy in the team to go under on his point total. I thought that was a pretty good option. Now, for a player on the Seattle Kraken, Vince Dunn, notably one of the better offensive defensemen in the league. But Andy, you put an offensive defenseman on a not very strong offensive team, it kind of kills that a little bit. You know, it's tough. If your forwards aren't really producing, if you're so caught up in doing your job defensively, you don't have time to jump into the rush and be a part of the offense. That hurts you. So I like the under 2.5 shots on goal for Vince Dunn. This one's a little bit chalkier, but I think for him right now, 7 of his last 10 games, he has not been firing the puck whatsoever. He has been focused more on what his actual position is labeled as, and that's just playing defense. He has no time right now to jump up into the rush. Those are two unders that I'm looking at. And if we want to look at some of the guys actually in some of the big games tonight, like Jack Eichel, like Connor McDavid, like Nathan McKinnon, I would actually take a look at the under on assists for Jack Eichel. I'm not saying the guy doesn't pass the puck, but he's more so a shooter, a sniper, a guy on the power play that's waiting for the puck to come to him. Andy, I woke up today and chose violence as far as fading some of these guys and not getting behind them and rooting for them to have success. But I'd say one of the ones I'm looking at as far as the under category would certainly be Ryan Strome to not get a point at minus 130.
Yeah, I mean, it is two under teams if I've ever seen it, but I could make the case that the Kraken at over 3.5 goals at plus money is a really interesting play. This team has not been able to score recently, but they have scored in 3 games recently. 2 of them against Anaheim, where they won 4-0 and 4-2, and the other was against San Jose, where they won 4-2. So it's like, okay, you give them the worst of the worst teams, and they can put up 4 goals. Give them any team with a pulse, and they're lucky to get 1 or 2 in the net. I mean, you look at the stats for the point scorers in this team, and it is ugly. I mean, Troy Terry has a point in 20% of his last 5 games. Cam Fowler 30% of his last 10 games. Even Yanni Gourde 20% of his last 10 games is a point. It's just under galore. But if this NHL season has taught us anything, this could be like a 6-5 game. And we're just, we're kind of just sitting there going, wow, most exciting game of the night. So, yeah, I'm with you that listen, you know me. I play unders. That's what I've done the whole season. So I'm with you on that one. This guy is minus 190 shots on goal. Every day that he plays, I keep looking at it and I go, why don't I just put some money on it? Minus 190. He goes over every single time. That Scott, is it Lofton for Philadelphia?
Scott Lawton.
Scott Lawton. Okay, the books keep putting out 1.5 shots on goal. He's done it 10 games in a row. And they just leave it at under minus 200. And I know that minus 200, minus 190 sounds like a not. Well, not, like it sounds like a ton, but not if he's hitting every single game. And the books they've just kept it here. So this could have been an easy cash, I don't know, 4 or 5 games in a row. So I'm really surprised that they haven't moved that one up here anymore. Any other NHL props in some of these marquee games? I know we got Vegas playing Arizona, Washington, Carolina. There's another game. You looking at unders in this Washington, Carolina game? I mean, Washington struggling to score. Carolina lockdown defense. It's pulling teeth just to get a goal past them. So you looking at any unders in the Capitals and the Hurricanes?
Yeah, Andy, I was watching some analysis. Like, there's this Twitter account, really good follow. It just pretty much breaks down like how I'm constantly learning about the game of hockey. And I think I know a good amount, but I'm constantly a student of the game. And it's talking about different defenses. And it's very rare in hockey for a team to play man-to-man defense in their defensive zone. Like, usually there's a lot of switching and like you're covering a certain area. You're playing along the boards. You're playing along the half wall. The Carolina Hurricanes play man-to-man defense. Like, that's how you know that they are just worried. They get a lead and then they just find their guy in the D zone and just lock them up. Like, that game to me is going to be really defensive despite the back-to-back scenarios there for that one. But I will say, I've talked about it before. I'll say it again. You can find some of these teams that are having some success, but it's only a few guys doing the scoring. Like, I love being the guy that finds the third line player that no one's talking about that's going over because you get good prices on it. But at the same time right now, and whenever I've mentioned it on Puck Time as well, Connor McMichael, Dylan Strome, and Alexander Ovechkin. I mean, those 3 guys, if you take all 3 of them to score a goal, usually one of them are scoring. If they get to 3 or 4 goals, you're getting a goal out of them. And McMichael is still like a really solid price at a goal or at least a point. So I would look at that. And I think I wanted to mention one other guy for the Oilers and Avalanche game. I think I heard you mention this guy's name a few weeks ago, Evander Kane. I mean, is this guy just waiting for the playoffs to come out of his shell? He hasn't gotten a point in 8 of his last 10 games. And, he's playing on the Oilers, a team that actually scores goals, a team that has a lot of offensive capability. And he's gone under his points in 8 of his last 10 games. So to me, that might be worth a look to continue to fade. And it sounds funny saying he might be a playoff guy, but it's true. Some people are just more built for the playoffs. Like, the Maple Leafs didn't pick up Tyler Bertuzzi for the regular season. They picked up a guy like that because they know how to play in the playoffs. But I think it's very weird that we haven't really seen much of an adjustment on Evander Kane to go under his number. And then if we want another over, if you want to cheer somebody on, Zach Hyman has been unbelievable. I mean, 50 goal scorer. He probably has the best contract in the entire league right now, him and Sam Reinhart. He's gone over his 3.5 in 8 of his last 10 games. You're only paying minus 105. Like, if you had David Pastrnak with this exact same stat line, you're getting like 3.5 or 4. You know what I mean? Like, these ridiculous numbers. And if it was 3.5 for Pastrnak, it would be like minus 150. So to get minus 105 on Zach Hyman, I think is a pretty good one here. And really quick, I know it's not a future show here, but I have to mention this. 8-1 their last 9 games, the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're 25-1 to win the Stanley Cup right now, Andy. This is to me, and I know you follow the NBA every year very closely, closer than me. Remember when everybody said like the Warriors dynasty was done? Steph can't lead this team on his own. Well, he did, and they won a championship again. Something seems a little bit weird to me about this number at 25-1 with Kucherov, I guess, kind of being the Steph Curry comparison right now, just absolutely carrying this team. He had 3 or 4 points yesterday against the Canadiens. They're going to get a tough first-round matchup, but every first-round matchup is tough. For John Cooper and his staff, it's just about getting into the playoffs. This team seems to just coast through November, December, January, February, and then in March and April, they just turn it on. As long as they're in a playoff spot, they're happy. At 25-1 to enter the playoffs at one of the highest numbers possible for a team that's been to the Stanley Cup Finals in like 3 of the last 4 years. I just think that's a little bit ridiculous. So if anybody wants a future to get behind, I think that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, you brought him up. I hit Evander Kane under his point. I played him 5 times this season to not have a point. Actually, just 5 times in the last 2 months, and he's hit every single time. He's a fantastic guy. It doesn't get a lot of power play minutes. That's the other really nice thing, especially in close games. Edmonton just throws their main power play lineup out there, and they're out there for all of mostly all of the power play. So Evander Kane had a great moment in the last game, Andrew. He had a shot on goal and it went off the goalie, so he tried to charge towards the goal to get the rebound, and he tripped and face planted, and then the refs called a penalty, and on replay, like, there was not an opposing player even remotely close to him. I mean, he literally just dug his skate and tripped, face planted, and somehow they got a power play out of it. But classic Evander Kane, not
drawing
being
the penalty.
involved in some, drawing the penalty, and then he's not out there for the power play even to get a shot off. But yeah, he's been a great one. I'm having a great NHL year, and it's just taking a lot of these same guys. That's been the strategy this year, and Evander Kane has been a really, really good one. And you're right. I don't think I'll play him in the playoffs. I've been playing him in the regular season when the matchup warrants it, but when the playoffs come around, it's just a different beast, and I'll have to go over the numbers. But yeah, he does seem like he does much better in the playoffs. So, guys, if you're watching and you're enjoying the gambling content, go and hit the like button. Tell us what your favorite prop is coming up for this weekend, or what you've been hitting on over the last week. There's been a lot of really good ones in the NBA and in the NHL. A lot of these same guys have been hitting their props. So tell us what you've been cashing on. Let us know if you agree or disagree with anything that we have. And hit the like button and hit that bell. You get notified about any shows that come on. We've got game-by-game breakdowns, and we're getting you ready for the college basketball Final Four and finals. We've got individual game breakdowns on the WagerTalk TV YouTube channel. So hit the like button, leave us a comment, and subscribe. Andrew, let's jump a little bit into NBA. There's one that I am really bummed that the books have kind of jumped all over and they moved the line, but it does make sense, and that is my guy Tyrese Halliburton over his 3-pointers. When he came out of the All-Star break, he was just ice cold. He was dealing with an injury, and he was going under 2.5 made 3-pointers. And whenever you get one of these guys that you know he's going to turn the corner, you got to be ready to just fire away. And sure enough, he has now gone over in 6 out of the last 7 games, and the books have caught on. He's minus 170 today. I would still play him, though. I really would. He was like 5 of 12 from the field, so he's getting tons of attempts, and his number is at 2.5. This is a Pacers team that runs and guns, and when he's shooting the ball well, he's got the green light special. So Tyrese Halliburton has come out of his funk, and that's good news. That's good news for the Pacers. So I imagine they want to keep the momentum going with him. And then the other guy who has been on fire from 3 points is none other than Kevin Durant. He has gone over in 5 straight games, and you're getting a much better line on this one. This one's only minus 115. I think it's because he's playing Minnesota, and Minnesota's been very good against the 3-point defense. They are allowing 35% from 3-pointers. They're allowing 11.3 makes. But Durant has hit 4, 3, 4, 3, and 3 his last 5 games, and their number is at 2.5. So Kevin Durant is on a really, really nice streak. Sometimes these close games, even though they might be against good defenses, if it's close, you know he's not sitting because of a blowout, and maybe they need maybe they need a 3-point basket at the end of the first half or at the end of the game, and he gets a couple of extra attempts. So I would not be scared to sprinkle Kevin Durant over 2.5 3-pointers tonight against Minnesota. Andrew, what else do we have going on in the prop world?
Andy, I'll jump in really quick on an NBA, and it'll just be a team total here. I continue to look at these team totals in the NBA with fatigue teams. And I understand a lot of the times you're fading fatigue teams. People would think that I would just look at the point spread for that team that is the more rested team. But what I've noticed a lot of the time is the more rested team doesn't seem to be covering the spread a lot of the time for me. they just seem to be going over their point total. And I understand I could just take the full game over, but just targeting certain teams in really, really crappy situations. And one that stuck out to me right away was one that a little bit close to home for me. You've got the Bucks and Raptors going head to head tonight. Both these teams, third game in 4 nights, but fourth game in 6 nights here. And we've got the Bucks coming off a loss as a decent sized favorite in this one. I like the over 122 team total for this Milwaukee Bucks team. You take a look at some of the games and some of the numbers they put up recently, you might shake your head as to why I'm asking them to put up that many points. But then you go ahead and look at what the Raptors do and how many points they give up. 145 to the Knicks, like it's nobody's problem. Giving up 123, 126 to some teams that aren't even top of the table. So when I look at these matchups, I want to look at teams that are fatigued, teams that are gassed. And even the next one that I was looking at was Mavericks versus Warriors. You've got both teams, fourth game in 6 nights. You've got an in-season revenge spot for the Mavericks. You've got a back-to-back for the Warriors. I'm looking at the team total over for the Mavericks tonight. I mean, a team that I don't even know how much I can rely on defensively some of the time, but I do believe they can turn it on offensively. So, I'm not saying I don't play point spreads in the NBA anymore. I'm looking at different ways to bet it, looking at how certain teams perform within certain point spread ranges, favorites between a certain number. But overall, getting a team that's more rested against a fatigued team, especially if a team's on the second half of a back-to-back and they played well in the first half, because to me, that's a big difference. In all of the sports I handicap, that's been a big part of my handicapping now. If you have an NBA team, an NHL team, hell, even an MLB team, but they play back-to-back like every day. So when you got a team that's coming off a big win in the first half, it's way different than if they're coming off a major loss. And I think the Warriors played well last night. Although Houston had a pretty good spot for their team total, I think tonight's a good night for the Dallas Mavericks. So that's a little bit of stuff for me right now in the NBA. Andy, real low volume with it, but I've really been enjoying it. Just fading fatigued teams, fading these gas teams.
I mean, Toronto's just on the ultimate tanking. I mean, they're the classic tanking for this season. I wish I would have been ahead of that one. Coming out of All-Star break, a lot of websites put up like what will the win totals be at the end of the year? And man, do I have regrets about not pegging some of these teams that want to tank. Toronto has their own pick. So it was the writing was on the wall that they were just going to sit everybody. And what if they lost like 15 in a row? That would have been like such an easy cash. But yeah, team totals on teams like Toronto and those fatigue teams are great. And Andrew, I'm with you on the low volume thing. It's actually been like a revelation to me in the last like 6 months. And I know that can be, and we can talk about this. This isn't like specific plays, but it's a strategy. I think a lot of times in our industry, you have to have plays every day in every sport. Well, if you're an MLB handicapper, you have to have a play every single day. And I made the conscious decision to just not kind of try, not do that. And it's a little strange because you look at an entire card and you're like, I don't like it. And then you do it like 5 days in a row. And you're like, well, how do I not have a play in the NBA for like 5 days in a row? But there are other sports out there. And I will tell you, in 2024 in the NBA, I've only had 22 plays, but I'm 14-8. Very awesome. Profitable. So, and if you think about it, if you do that in 3 or 4 sports, you end up having a play almost every day. It just depends on what sport it is. So I'm all in on the low volume thing. I've become perfectly at peace with not having plays in sports every day. And I got to tell you, my bankroll has really gone up by it. Like it's the less is more kind of mentality. We're up 58 units so far in 2024 by lowering the amount of plays that we do. So I know for myself and for clients, this is just going to be how it is, for the foreseeable future. So I don't know what your thoughts are on the low volume approach.
Well, I'd be lying if I said it's not frustrating on the nights like last night for me. I had a 5% play, so didn't want to overexpose the bankroll. So that was the only NHL play, and I think I went like 3-0 on plays given out on puck time. But those plays weren't the 5. But at the same time, when you have those big plays, right? I don't want to give out more than 5% on a given night during the NHL season, especially right now. I mean, Andy, for me and you right now, it's a tale of two different tapes, and I have no problem talking about it. I'm super happy for the great season you've had. For me, it's been a struggle. So the low volume approach, I think, is good for when you're winning, but also for when you're losing, right? I mean, I could easily try and build a streak right now and start blasting out 6 or 7 games a night. It's still the slow and steady way to grind things out. And what people don't realize is there's still 2 weeks left in the regular season, and the playoffs in the NHL are very long. Like, do you see some of these matchups we're going to get for the first round? I think like they're all going to go 6 or 7 games. There won't be any sweeps, I don't think, in the first round. So low volume has been good for people having success, but it's also good if you're not having success to try and just manage your bankroll properly. So two different angles to it, I guess. One's a bit more depressing, but but in all seriousness, there's 2 different ways about it, right? I mean, low volume helps you when you're in a rut. It also helps you when you're doing well.
Yeah, absolutely. We always say the best way to make money is to not lose it. So if you're and that's one of those things that like it doesn't show up on your record. Like you can't be like, well, I would have lost 4 plays this week, but I laid off of them. Like there's no, there's no math for it. It's kind of like being a good locker room guy in a sports team. There's no number you can put on it. But yeah, it's
Right.
it's definitely worked out pretty good. We can take a look at some of the props in UFC for this weekend. There is, let's see, let's take a look at some fights that I would expect to go under. There's actually not a lot of fights that I think can go under. I will tell you the main event, Chris Curtis and Brendan Allen, I think has a very good chance to not go the distance on that one. This is a rematch. I think it's a bad matchup for Brendan Allen. I don't want to say Brendan Allen's a little bit of a fraud, but his wins have not been that impressive. I know he's got a bunch, like 6 in a row, but they've not been against amazing opponents. And Chris Curtis is just the ultimate nightmare matchup for him. Curtis's striking is good. Brendan Allen is always good for at least 1 to 2 absolutely dumbass moves per fight where he gets caught. And Chris Curtis is the guy to knock him out. Unfortunately, Andrew, Chris Curtis is in the fade the baby theory. So I'm at a crossroads with this one. I want to bet on Chris Curtis because I like the matchup, but he fits into the fade the baby theory. This Walter Walker versus Lucas Bresky, I think could be these two big guys that get really tired at the end of the first round, and then it's just 2 heavyweights who can't finish each other. And the over-under on that one to go the distance is pretty close to even money. And I think those guys could just be super exhausted there at the end and just can't finish each other. And then Court McGee and Alex Morono. I really like Alex Morono to win that fight. I think Court McGee is, I don't want to say done, but yeah, he's kind of done. He went for a long time without ever being knocked out, and he's been knocked out in the first round in his last 2 fights. One of them by Matt Brown, which isn't a great look. The other by Jeremiah Wells. But when you go from never being knocked out to knocked out in the first round 2 fights in a row, it's just, it's not great. It's not great. So, and he's been around for a long, long time. And Andrew, have you heard Court McGee's story about the one drink? Have you heard his story when he was on The Ultimate Fighter about that? He like struggles with addiction. And he was saying, he told this story about like, yeah, the last time I drank, I just had 1 drink and I woke up 3 days later in New Mexico. And I was like on a basement floor, like rummaging around the carpet looking for crystal meth. And it was like this, you're like, oh
And
my
that's
God,
sad.
man.
That's sad.
Oh my God. But it's a redemption story because he's
right.
He kicked it. He kicked the habit. Now he's this amazing had this amazing UFC career, but kind of feel like the wear and tear of that lifestyle has caught up to him. He's just coming off neck surgery again. Like there's another red flag, and he's like, I feel great. And I was like, well, that's great, but you did just have neck surgery. So Alex Morono, I think he's undervalued. His last loss was to Joaquin Buckley, Andrew, and Buckley looks amazing now. So I don't really put too much stock into that one. So I think that there's a good look for that one to not go the distance. Any thoughts on UFC this weekend?
Look, Andy, I like sometimes when I can come on here and give out something on the undercard, but the play that I had written down and I have betted already was just the main event to not go the distance. And I would tell people that if you agree with Andy and I on this one, probably bet it sooner than later. Would you say, Andy? I mean, I don't think the odds are going to get better for this. Yeah, I mean, you have your awesome theories, Andy, and this one isn't that much of a fun one, but I've noticed a lot. Like even though the matchup, of course, we saw it end in a TKO back in 2021, and I know that wasn't just yesterday. I mean, that feels like just yesterday, but still a few years ago. But I'm still a big believer that rematches typically end in the same type of method of victory as the first one does. Like even take a look at the Alex Pereira versus Adesanya. I mean, a different guy won, but it was still like someone's lights are being turned off type of fight. You know what I mean? And you look at the last 4 fights for Allen haven't gone the distance. And the ones for Curtis have literally just been like him mauling people and just controlling the octagon and winning that way. But I feel like in this one with these 2 power hitters and also the amount of like punches that the Allen absorbs, like I was looking at some of the stats and it's ridiculous. Like this guy, it's almost like you were talking about strength of schedule or, strength of guys he's fought, where you finally fight a guy that has such a strong punch that you can't take those as much. You can't be the human punching bag. I like this under quite a bit. I think it's a pretty good number, but you got to get behind it as much as you can, as fast as you can, because I think the number is going to move. On the undercard, I found it pretty chalky, Andy, and I find on these fight nights, like I've actually been finding the fight nights have more favorites hitting lately, and the pay-per-views are where the dogs are cashing. So this is actually, another example of a fight night where actually you'll probably find like 1 or 2 guys that I'm pairing together on a money line parlay, and especially the early card guys that are trying to work their way up in the rankings. And don't you think it's kind of backwards, Andy? I mean, I guess not backwards because on the pay-per-view events, that's where you have such tight competition, so upsets can happen. But I would tell people, don't be scared of these favorites on the undercards, and especially on these fight nights, because they're set up for success in a lot of their scenarios. Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, it's a fight by fight matchup, but I'm with you. The dogs are barking on the pay-per-views, and there's something to be said about these fight nights and these lower cards where you've got fighters fighting for roster positions. They're super motivated. And I feel like sometimes when we get to these pay-per-views, it's fighters that just got big paydays and they don't want to be knocked out in spectacular fashion. And you end up with some of these cautious fights, which brings these underdogs into play. So I'm with you 100% that some of the big favorites on the pay-per-views are there. I don't want to say sucker bets, but they're just traps. Like you look at it and you're like, oh man, this guy's just been on a tear, and then I'll lay the minus 200 on him, and then he looks terrible on the pay-per-view because he's fighting cautious or anything. So yeah, I'm with you. If you're looking at some of these favorites, Alex Morono, I like him as a favorite. Charlie Campbell is a big favorite. I like him. Ignacio Bahamondes, I really like him as a big favorite. There's a couple I don't like, but you're going to have that every card. But yeah, I'm with you. Fight nights, yeah, some of the favorites have been, absolutely steamrolling. So 100% on that one. Andrew, tell everyone what you have up and where we can find you at for this weekend.
Andy, I still have a great code. AM69 gets a week for $69. One play, one best bet, $25, 5%, $35. But the week pass, $69. AM69 will be in action, but very minimally with the UFC. A huge NHL slate coming up on Saturday, and the MLB team totals keep on rolling, man. We keep on fading these bad pitchers, and so far it's working. So I will not go away with it. So looking forward to a great weekend, Andy. Great doing the Prop It Up with you as always. And before I send it back to you, I will say some batter versus pitcher info for today. Some guys you might want to look at betting on. I'd say Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber going up against Patrick Corbin, everyone's favorite pitcher to fade. Great matchup for them. As far as their on-base percentages, it's unbelievable. We got a 4.29 and a 4.04 against Patrick Corbin, and you've got a great matchup for Kevin Kiermaier against Marcus Stroman. Hit a few home runs against him, and great on-base percentage. You can get minus 125, over 1.5 runs, hits, and RBIs for Kyle Schwarber for Philadelphia Phillies against Patrick Corbin. I feel like that's a great bet for today. If you want to try and find a way to fade Corbin today, that's a good way to go.
Yeah, Andrew, like not only are there some bad pitchers, I feel like a couple of teams have just like accumulated them. Yeah, we want a bunch of them. We don't want just one bad pitcher. We want like 3 or 4 of them to lob out there. So Colorado Rockies might be tops of the list with some really bad pitching.
It's brutal.
Up a ton of runs. It's really bad. It's really, really and they're traditionally bad on the road, but you think their ERAs are high on the road. I mean, wait till they get home in that altitude. The ball's just sailing out of the park. So, yeah, they get Tampa today. So, yeah, there are some bad pitchers. Team totals is a really good way to go. I have a promo code that is up. It is Lang3. Or I'm sorry, it's Andy3 today. Andy3, ANDY3. Gets a 3-day pass for $49. That way you can get all sports for the weekend. We've got a great card. Number 1 in NHL in profits, ROI, and winning percentage, and we are in play tonight in the NHL. We've also got a UFC play that is up. We've got a couple of lacrosse plays. There is a Formula One race this weekend, so we will have something up for that. And as mentioned, we are up plus 58.5 units in 2024. So we want to keep the momentum going throughout the rest of the weekend. And like Andrew said, loaded NHL card on Saturday. We got NBA games as well. So we're on really nice streaks across most sports. So take advantage of that. Andy3, 3-day pass for $49. All plays, including 5% plays. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. Hit the like button. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you're liking for this weekend. Good luck on all your plays.